And welcome to Telewizja Republika. During the early hours of September 3rd, Russia launched a brutal attack on Poltava, killing 53 people and injuring 298, according to the State Emergency Service. Russian forces struck the city with two ballistic missiles, targeting a military institute and nearby medical facility. Rescue operations continued today as at least 5 people remained trapped under the rubble. In Lviv, 7 civilians, including children, were killed and 47 others were wounded during Russia's mass drone and missile attack on September 4th. Explosions were also reported in Kryvyi Rih, Kyiv and other cities. Ukrainian authorities have confirmed damage to schools, hospitals and historic buildings in Lviv, and that's the Russia relentless targeting of civilian infrastructure in progress. These attacks conclude with reports of Iranian missiles, including Fateh 360 and Abadil, being en route to Russia, as reported by Bloomberg. On the front lines, Russian forces have advanced near Toretsk, Pokrovsk and southwest of Donetsk city, intensifying fighting in these critical areas. The Russian advance in these theaters was to slow down after the Ukrainian Kursk incursion that we are going to talk about, but so far it seems that the opposite has actually happened. Ukraine, however, is striking back deep inside Russia. Recent Ukrainian drone attacks have hit energy infrastructure deep inside Russia, as far as actually the outskirts of Moscow, the capital city, and in Tver Oblast. A novel thermite drone attack was reported today by Forbes, based on the video posted by Ukraine's 108th Separate Territorial Defense Brigade. Meanwhile, the United States is nearing an agreement to provide Ukraine with long-range JASM missiles, potentially allowing easier strikes deep into Russian territory. However, Kyiv would need to wait several months as the US works through technical issues ahead of any shipment, US officials said. Politically, Foreign Minister of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, submitted his resignation on September 4th, joining after high-ranking government officials such as Strategic Industries Minister, Justice Minister, Ecology Minister, and several deputy prime ministers. This wave of dismissals is a part of a broader reshuffle affecting over half of the government, signaling significant changes ahead for Ukraine's leadership amid ongoing war challenges. This is the report, the latest report on the situation on the front line, and that's our website, rachon.com. You'll find our Substack account over there. You can leave us your email here. You can click subscribe button on our YouTube channel. My name is Michał Rachoń. This is Rachon, and we rollin'.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
And tonight, one and only Rawlings again on Telewizja Republika. Colonel, great to see you. Rip, great to see you again on our program. Rip, we haven't seen each other for a while, and when we were off air, at least we didn't see each other, some important things were going on the front line of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Actually, we are having a war inside the territory of Russia on one hand, with Ukrainian troops advancing inside the Russian territory. On the other hand, we got some changes on the front line within the territory of Ukraine because Russia is pushing over there. What's your take on the current situation right now? Where are we in this war?
Yeah, I mean, right now, this is an interesting fact I think that your listeners and viewers are really going to appreciate. But we're getting close to a milestone, not a good milestone, but 1,000 days of war. Now, 1,000 days of war to me, especially kind of from what you asked, which is in the strategic context of the war itself, put it into perspective for everybody. So if you take a look at the United States involvement on the ground in Europe, you have to look back to July of 1943 when the United States invaded Sicily. That entered us into Europe proper. Obviously, the war was much longer for Europeans, but we had the Normandy invasion of June of 1944. Everybody knows those days. But Victory in Europe Day was May of 1945, the defeat of Nazi Germany. The U.S. likes to think our involvement was helpful, but that's only 670 days on the ground in Europe with U.S. involvement, if you include our invasion through Sicily and into Europe proper. So we're close to 1,000 days now in the war occurring over there between Russia and Ukraine. And strategically, we see a lot of major moves. Now, I know we're going to talk about it some more, but we've got this Kursk incursion that you just mentioned happening inside Russia itself, Russia's reaction to it. We have drone attacks inside Russia all the way to the gates of Moscow, hitting some locations, vital targets. This is oil and economic infrastructure. And then the reverse, which is Russia hitting with some precision guided munitions, well, one car park, but it was very close within feet within the past 48 hours of a mall. And we've seen a lot of other civilian infrastructure targeted. So I know the mayor of Lviv was on the radio just the other day saying that there are people that have been killed in Lviv. There were some missile strikes that were very close, obviously, to the Polish border. You know, what occurred or how that occurred, were they knocked off course by anti-aircraft missile systems? You know, how close were they really? You know, is it a threat to Poland? Those are all things up to debate. But also we've got U.S. politics occurring in just a couple short months. We have a U.S. election, which for a lot of people here in the United States is going to be a single, you know, issue type of election. They're looking at what's happening over there in Russia and Ukraine, and they're saying, well, look, our partners in Poland, in Germany, in all of our European, all of our NATO allies are at threat. And who is going to be the person that's defending U.S. interests and our allies' interests over there? And so to me and to a lot of other people, this is a very interesting season. I would say add in the worst aspect, of course, probably the most important if you're on the ground fighting, which is, I believe, and have stated so on your show as early as a month ago, that the Russians will do a very massive attack on the front and make some gains. And they're already starting to do that. I made that prediction as early as December of last year on your show, and we're seeing them make some gains, about 200 square miles in a region that we didn't expect them to make gains before. And we're seeing incursions in areas like Sumy, and also those locations where I've brought in some refugees, and to them, it's very personal. I talk to them on a daily basis.
So, Rip, what is the reason for which this advance, this Russian advance is occurring? We were talking with other military experts when the Kursk incursion began that this is a difficult situation for Russia, that Russia will have to drag out some forces from possibly from the Ukrainian territory. So what is your understanding of this? Let's start with what you just mentioned, with Russian advancing inside territory of Ukraine while Ukrainians are on the territory of Russia.
Yeah, I'm sad I didn't make it on last week. You guys invited me and I had an illness, so I couldn't come on the show in the middle of this very historic invasion into Kursk. And Russia's reaction now, I believe, and it's in some ways fortuitous to come on a week later and do the analysis of what has happened. So the invasion itself into Russian territory, very interesting strategically, operationally, and tactically. So the three levels of war that I always like to talk about on your show. I know your viewers know all about this, but just a reminder, strategic, the top level politicians, operational, where generals tend to do their things, and then tactical, sergeants and corporals duking it out, toe-to-toe, shooting each other. And we know this war has all three layers. The layer of the Kursk incursion, generally strategic or operational, but we're seeing some tactical side also, which is Ukraine invaded into the territory of Russia. They said or claimed that they did not ask the United States. I find that very hard to believe that they didn't come back and ask, or at least talk to, at least a very short period of time in advance of their attack. What are the gains from this? And what's happened, I think, is the most important part of this. Well, if you look at the map, you can see, I'm going to go in opposite for your viewers here, but if this is Ukraine proper, this is the invasion into Kursk. It's made this salient kind of a left hook, if you're looking at the map, from west to east into Europe. Now, into Russia. We all know Kursk as the World War II battlefield. Happened in July to August of 1943. It was summarily a Russian-Soviet victory, and we hope that won't occur this time. But what does it do strategically? Well, strategically, this is a great win, as you and I have talked about offline in the past couple weeks through texts and phone calls, where Ukraine now has changed the dialogue and said, look, we can do this. We're able to go into Russian territory. Strategically, it's very frightening from a political perspective, because the U.S. obviously is biting its nails saying, oh, my God, please don't do this, because now this involvement is dragging, all of its allies, Ukraine's allies, into the conflict, into Russia proper. And of course, Russia will use that as a political victory for their own and say, well, look, we told you that NATO wanted to do this, invade into our territory. You wanted to make Ukraine part of NATO, and here they are immediately attempting to invade. They're involving themselves in what we just call a simple kind of a civil war between us and our smaller brother here in Ukraine. Not believable from anybody who's got any head on their shoulders, just political talk. But let's go to the operational. Now, here's the part that I think is the most worrisome. This salient is very good on a strategic perspective from Ukraine. It shows that they have the muscle to do it. It shows weakness on the Russian side. At the operational side, though, we're looking at this saying, well, how long can they hold it? President Zelensky was on the television just within the past 17 hours, and he stated, when they asked him very bluntly, what are you going to do about it? He said, well, there's some military stuff going on, so I can't really talk about it. They kind of cornered him and said, come on, what do you intend to do? He said, at the very least, we're going to hold it. Now, holding it for how long? What happens if they do withdraw? The withdrawal from Kursk now looks like a defeat, so that's not good. If they're cut off, meaning if the Russians use this advantage of this salient to cut the nape of the neck off and then surround these troops, kind of a la the Battle of Bastogne, you've got some Ukrainians caught in a pocket by themselves. Operationally, on the other hand, though, Ukraine has said, look, I'm going to do something over here so that you are now strained, Russia, and having to defend yourself in multiple points of the map, not just coming onto my territory and fighting me. That's good. It says, look, spread your forces, otherwise we're going to hold a piece of your land. So great analysis on both sides, a lot to think about and talk about, but at the same time, it's kind of a plus minus. How long can they hold? What happens to those Ukrainian forces if they are cut off? Now, Russia has made its first move, so that's why I think it's nice to talk about this 1 week post facto, which is Russia has now basically doubled down over in the east of Ukraine. They have started to clobber that territory in a manner that we predicted about 9 months ago, which is an increase in the volume of attacks. They've said, hey, look, if you want to weaken yourself on your frontages by taking troops away from this battle, the battle in the east of Ukraine, and fighting into our territory, no problem, we'll hold you. And then we're just going to double down on our attacks in there. And that's very dangerous. We have seen, as I mentioned, about 200 square miles worth of gains from Russia into Ukraine, all the way up into regions that we just didn't expect them to make gains into. But here they are. Now, what does this mean? Where are we going to go with this? What I would say to the intelligent viewers of your channels here is watch not the drone strikes. These are the kind of shiny objects that they throw about. What's their impact on the war? Well, one of them in a staging area to me was interesting. They hit an area that we know is an area for training for Ukraine, that we know is an area where they have a lot of supply and logistics. And these hubs I've talked about on the show a lot of times before are vital to both Ukraine and Russia. And this drone attack they hit to me was pretty important because it signals that's where we want to go. We're going to hit Lviv, we're going to hit Kiev to disrupt you and make you feel bad. But these shots, I'm going to mispronounce the name, but it's Polenska. If I'm saying it correctly, I think I'm saying it incorrectly, but this is a rather large town, about 300 kilometers behind the front. Now, that coupled with how much artillery and the volume of artillery in the next 2-3 weeks, I think should be a signal on that's where they want to go. They're going to make a decisive blow to try to attack in there and weaken the front in general. So I'm worried.
What do you mean a decisive blow in that in that context? Because this 200 square miles is a significant gain in terms of the rather smaller frontline movements over the span of last, I don't know, even 2 years, we can say 1.5 years. But what do you mean by that?
Well, it's a little difficult when you look at a battle frontage to determine where the enemy is intending to attack you, okay? Studied it for 23 years in the Marine Corps, went to all of the Marine Corps strategic schools and operational schools, and if history serves us correctly, and if I can bring that here to bear, what I would say is you need to see these small signals on the map of what your enemy is intending to do. They will hit softening areas that are just behind the front line on a daily basis. They will hit the front line on a daily basis or a minute-by-minute basis. But then these slightly, not deep targets, that's Kiev and Lviv, but these mid-range targets become very important. You've got a very broad frontage. Think about Ukraine. They're basically at least semi-encircled. So where Russia attacks next in the mid-range, to me, is very important because that operationally signals where they want to go. So this village, this town, has been, it's like many others. There's a lot of them along the frontage, 300 kilometers deep. It's where you set all your supply. It's where you set training. It's right out of the range of artillery. So you're not getting hit on a day-to-day basis. You can bring units back from the front to rest, recuperate, rearm, and refit, bringing in some new recruits and whatnot, get them ready to go back out and fight again. So those staging areas become vital nexes where we take a look and say, well, if Russia's leaving them untouched, they don't intend to fight the deep battle or the mid-range battle in that area. But if they start hammering them, and they did in the past 24 hours with this village, you start to say, is this where they intend then to drive a wedge between the forces, attempt to get behind and envelop their enemy on the front?
How do you choose on this operational level? How do you choose? How do you pick a spot, a place on the front line where you do want to push, where you do want to apply this kind of military power? What are the conditions under which you pick? Yeah, this is a good spot. This is not a good spot to do something like this.
Yeah, terrific question. So there's a lot to that. So first of all, you're looking at the frontline forces and saying, how strong are they? Then you're looking at just behind them, what's their reinforcement capability? So if I'm looking at a line of defenses, we call it defense in depth in the United States. It has different names, but it basically says, if you defeat the frontline forces, I still have something behind it that can absorb the blow, or I've got reactionary forces, and this is the U.S. method of battle, where I can quickly counterattack or zoom them back out to the battlefield to reinforce that battle line. But then one step behind that, even further, is where I've got kind of a resupply zone. And that's what Russia has been softening up for about the past 9 months between the end of winter, spring, and now through summer into this fall period, where they're taking a look and saying, where are they weak? If I've attacked here many times, how quick are they responding? They're studying the generals at the front and saying, is this guy a guy who reacts quickly? Or is he a guy who's kind of recalcitrant? Is he a guy who was well connected and call up to his boss and say, hey, I need some forces, and he gets them? Or is the kind of guy that, no one's really paying much attention to? Is it a sleepy nook on the battlefield? So Russia has been studying all of that and keeping Ukraine on the defensive posture, on a defensive footing until the Kursk attack. And thinking about all of that aspect, that battlefield geometry, and saying, okay, we've studied all of this. We know all the guys on the front lines, behind the lines, and then one step deeper. Now we know where the weak points are based on reaction times, based on supply, how long it takes to get them there. And if I can now hit one of these nodes, the one that we just mentioned, and squeeze off an area, that recalcitrant general who doesn't get supply very quickly, who's maybe on the end of the supply chain anyhow, that's the spot I'm going to hit. And so we're going to look, I think, in the next 3 weeks, then where does the artillery follow up with this? It will be a massive artillery barrage at the front lines. We should ignore a fair amount of these drone attacks. They're just kind of, dangly, shiny bits, unless they're in the mid-range, and pay very close attention to heavy drone attacks or the glide bombs that we've seen. And unfortunately, Ukraine is not able to hit these aircraft as they fire these glide bombs, but they're up to 1 ton of warhead. That's a lot of damage. When I was in Ukraine, I watched in Lviv as 12 missiles struck, and I think I can talk about this now. This was, a good year and a half ago or a year ago, and they struck the train station. I was very pleased to see that the next morning, the rail station was back up and running. There were some very large holes in the ground, but they weren't 1 ton worth of warhead. That's what we're talking about in the battles that are occurring now. And so watch those mid-range strikes in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then watch the artillery on the front lines. And that's where we're going to see a major attack by Russia.
Yeah, that's actually a fascinating thing about the psychology and the political knowledge, political intelligence about the position and in the structure of power of the opponent, of the certain generals, certain commanders. Very interesting. Never thought about it. It's pretty obvious when you say it. Yeah, but it gives you a perspective and knowledge about the weak points that you can use to exploit the features, political, psychological, whatever you call it, or the way they are commanding their troops. Rip, we got a couple of minutes to think about and to get your knowledge, your information, your prediction regarding the Kursk incursion. You actually mentioned it, but what is the goal? I mean, what is the game plan over there? We've been asking this question for many weeks, and right now it seems that those questions are even more important as this incursion lasts for some time and Russia reacts to it.
Yeah, so the overwhelming majority impact, if you will, or reasons for them to do this is political. They have had a very difficult ally in the United States and also some of the other European countries who have given them, on the one hand, some premier weapon systems. We talked about on your show before how they're unfortunately kind of one level demoted from what they could be. But we've given them premier weapon systems and then tied their hands behind their backs and said, well, you can only use it in these ways. And, I always kind of think of the football mentality on this. What if and I'm talking European football here, soccer to the United States. What would happen if I was playing against you and you had, a buddy who said, well, listen, you can't play. We've got a really good football for you, but you can't play with that one. We're going to give you instead a couple tennis balls. And you go, well, okay, I'm going to play with what I can. Yeah, but here's the other thing is you really can only use them up to about the center of the field. Yeah. Well, you
cannot use the left side, or you cannot use the right side of the soccer field. You have to, use all the other. However, the other side can use all pitch and all.
The other side has got 16 soccer balls. Their allies, Russia's allies, puts no restrictions on them. You don't see Iran saying, listen, you can only use the Shahed drones, east of the Dnieper River. No, Iran hasn't put any. They've said, hey, give us money, and here's some.
And you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, China's put no restrictions on the communications and radio jamming equipment, high-tech equipment that they've sent over based on U.S. technology, stolen from U.S. technology, and they've given them to Russia and said, hey, we don't care, do whatever you want. The artillery rounds they've given them, clobber those Ukrainians, we don't care. So, the Ukraine, unfortunately, just like our soccer or football allegory there, is fighting with one hand tied behind his back. It's been given a load of tennis balls. We won't even give them a few good soccer balls. And they're told you can't go past the 50-yard line. I mean, if I'm Ukraine, this is a political move into Kursk to demonstrate, look, America, whether you want me to or not, I'm dragging you into this. We are going to go in there. And the artillery pieces that they brought with them, because, inside this salient, this pocket where the Ukrainian soldiers are fighting, they've brought with them a lot of tools and technology. And of course, they're going to use the drones that they have to strike other infrastructure deeper into Ukraine. You got to hand it to Ukraine. President Zelensky coming on the other day saying he did not talk to President Biden. He did not talk to any of the chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Rip, sorry to interrupt you, but do we know? Do we know what is the level? What is the number of troops? What is the kind of technology that is being used? What do we know about the weapon systems that the Ukraine is using? It's an obvious question in a way. Are they using those HIMARS launching systems? Are they using those modern Western style long-range missiles and use it from this territory of Russia that is being controlled by Ukraine right now? Because if they do, it got some important political, actually, potential consequences.
Well, so obviously Ukraine has been very good about using the weapon systems that we've given them in a manner that we've asked them to. I would hate to do it if I was a Ukrainian general. I would have a hard time swallowing that pill. But the question that you've asked is, did they bring some of these weapon systems into their incursion in Kursk in Russia? We have to assume some of them have, although we haven't seen a lot of evidence of that. We did see
So
that
they are doing it smart way not to get caught.
Right, at least not get caught. What we did see is that the drones that struck deep, this oil refinery and depot over there in close to Moscow, was struck by some homemade drones. Russia, of course, claimed that they knocked 160 of them out of the sky. I find that very hard to believe. Some of these drones are micro drones intended to fight on the battlefield. Some of them are longer range drones, but anti-drone technology is something that we're going to be studying for many years after this war is over. And hopefully it's over in favor of Ukraine here. But what we're looking at is, devices that have the ability to do kind of AI or semi-autonomous GPS guided to their target with, small to medium-sized payloads, but they're effective. I don't think that the oil depots and energy centers that were hit in the past 40 hours will take that long to repair, but psychologically, it's very damaging, and it does show some determination on the world stage. But yeah, I mean, if you're using missile systems, those are defeatable. But the drone systems, 160 shot down by Russia, I don't buy it. I mean, maybe
you need one to get through.
Yeah.
in a certain manner, in a certain point of your choice. Rip, thank you very much. I'm looking at the clock. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You got tons of knowledge and you help us understand the war as you are walking us through the things that we do not see as a people with no military experience. Thank you very much. See you soon on Telewizja Republika.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we see each other next week. Stay tuned. Watch our website, that's racracon.com. You can leave us your email. You can join us here. You can, of course, subscribe our YouTube channel, which can also be found by typing Rachoń on YouTube search engine. See you soon. Stay safe. Ciao, ciao. Bye.